And we are now live. We are now live with David Taylor and Doug Brinkley. David Taylor, you've written about ginseng and WPA writers. Why do you pick these topics that you do?
Well, in both cases, I feel like they are almost underground histories, histories that really get a range of American stories and pull them together in ways that we generally don't see in other history books.
What's the lasting effect of the WPA Writers Project from the 1930s in your view?
There are two things, really. There's the lasting effect of what they created at the time in terms of the WPA guides and the histories that they gathered, really fine-grained histories of localities that you don't find in travel guides today. Those and the life histories that show a range of American life and experience and grit and resilience. This is a portrait of America taken at one of its worst times, and yet it still shows strength and courage, as well as harder aspects of America. The other legacy is really the view of America that came out in the writers who were exposed to that mandate to take a wide look at America. And so you see in their writings, the dialogue that they created afterwards, from Saul Bellows' The Adventures of Augie March, Nelson Algren's Man with Golden Arm, Richard Wright's Native Son, Zora Neale Hurston's later novels, when she became more epic and more expansive. You see them feeling their ability that they're not just telling a small American story, they have the mandate to tell a wider range, and that's for the decades afterwards, even up till now. With Studs Terkel, just recently passed, his range of American stories that you get is, I think, a legacy that many would point back to the WPA experience.
And Professor Doug Brinkley, what attracted you to write the introduction to this book?
Well, David Taylor's a fine scholar, and it's a wonderful topic, and we're friends, and I participated in the documentary that they made to go along with the book. But I myself have been a collector of WPA guides since I was a kid. I fell in love with them in Perrysburg, Ohio. We used to have them in our library. My parents and I would take trips across country, and we'd have WPA guides as really reference tools to kind of look up what town we're in and what city, particularly when we got off the highways and went into some of those blue highways or back roads of America. And it really is interesting to me as a historian because after the Civil War, the big thing in the West was to inventory our land by topography or by geological surveys. What kind of minerals do we have? Gold, silver, asbestos, copper. And that got achieved. Then you had a moment with Theodore Roosevelt as president, beginning of the 20th century, with a biological survey. And the big story was, let's get biologists and scientists out there, foresters, and tell us what kind of trees we have, what kind of petrified wood, what kind of ancient dinosaur bones, what kind of plants, and birds, animals, and we inventoried the biology of America. So by the time of the Great Depression, what was missing was somebody to kind of corral all this together in a people-friendly way. Was there a book that could talk about, geography, geology, topography, but also quirky roadside attractions, local population stories, mom and pop shops that mattered, and indigenous cultures coming up, whether it's turpentine workers from Florida or corn huskers from Nebraska, or glass makers from Toledo, Ohio. It somehow all became part of these WPA guides. And I think today we use this word Americana a lot. In fact, the other day I saw they had Americana Music Awards, and people like Johnny Cash get the awards, or in posthumously. But here is these WPA guys that sort of raw America, unplugged, in elegant prose, teaching us all about the mysteries of our country behind us. And even today, you can pick up a WPA guide and go to some of these places, and they're exactly as they were back in the 1930s. So they've maintained a relevancy. Certainly Mobil, Exxon, and AAA have brought out types of books. None equals the literary quality of the WPA. So if you're a book lover and an American travel lover, you're going to be like a moth to flames when it comes to these WPA guides.
This is the book once again, and now for your phone calls. First up for our guests, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Go ahead, Sioux Falls, you're on the air.
Yeah, Phil Downey is my name, and I'm 91 years old. and I worked under the WPA. I caddied at the course, and but we also had we shot rabbits and squirrels and learn how to eat those. It was pretty common, and my pay was 30 cents for an hour, and then I worked on a construction deal, and I had to climb up the high spots on the machines because I was pretty agile, and none of the older fellows would want to take care of it. And that's in Sioux City, Iowa. We lived on the outskirts of the city, and it cost rhubarb cost a nickel and a dime. We had a rhubarb patch. Sold a lot of rhubarb, nickels a dime, 15 cents. And I put the money in the bank, and I earned caddy and everything, and I got up to about $180, and I left it in the bank, and something happened in '33, which everybody, or not everybody knows, but when the banks all went down the drain, and I lost my $180, in which I earned by the nickels and dimes. And it cost a nickel to get on the streetcar, and a dime if you were over 12 years old. So it was quite a period of time. But the Lord's been good to me, and I'm pretty handy right now, even at my age of 91.
Well, thank you so much for calling in, gentlemen. That was kind of an oral history we just heard there, isn't it?
I was thinking, yes, it was exactly that kind of detail and the perspective that you get in the life histories, and that you get in that was inspired by those, that you get in something like StoryCorps today, where that is the kind of the personal level of history, or someone who experienced work on the WPA in the context of his life throughout. Yeah.
Doug Brinkley, as a historian, how important are oral histories to you?
Oh, they're invaluable. I mean, particularly if you can interview people that work for the WPA or the Federal Writers Project. It's a generation, unfortunately, that's passing. So there's been efforts to get to them quickly. By interviewing them, you get to see this diversity of America. I mean, what was great about the WPA guides is they weren't just New York written about America. They came directly with stories directly from the people. You could almost feel the stories coming from the land as if they were Woody Guthrie songs. Each person had a tale to tell, even listening to this gentleman talking about a particular place and time and shooting rabbits and squirrels and collecting rhubarb and going to a rhubarb festival and all, and evokes a South Dakota memory. And that's what's really this is all about, remembering America's past and starting a movement with the WPA guides to say everything matters. Popular culture matters, local mores matter, folkways matter, the lives of African Americans or Hispanics or Native Americans matter. It was very inclusive, the WPA guides and the Federal Writers Project, and in that way it gave us a multicultural America really for the first time.
Next call for our guest, Toledo, Ohio. Go ahead, Toledo.
Well, somebody said something about being drawn like a moth to a flame to these guides. I have about 75 of them, and I collect them wherever I go. I appreciate feeding my addiction this morning. I run a foundation in Toledo, right around the corner from where Doug Brinkley grew up. And we fund community organizing all over the country. I honestly find that the stories and insights of the guides from the mid to late 30s inform the work that I see people doing all over the country. I'm fascinated by the oddball stories and the edges of this project. I'd be interested from either author, what are the published by the project that you find the most fascinating? I have a little book called The Negroes of Nebraska. The Edge books that came out that you might recommend to those of us who are on the hunt.
David Taylor.
Yeah, that's interesting. There are a lot of edge books, a lot of city guides. The city guide to San Francisco is fascinating. There was planned a whole series of about African American life called The Negro in America. The Negro in Virginia is a really interesting look both at the history and the current life of African Americans. In the 30s, it was managed by a unit of African American writers, 16 of them in Hampton, Virginia. And so you get these, that's one in particular. Some of the state guides that are often also have these oddball elements. The Oklahoma guide has a fascinating essay on folklore primarily written by Jim Thompson, later the famous noir novelist, but his view of the dark stories of American life and how they feed the imagination and people's resilience is interesting.